start from the beginning.
Okay.
Could you share your name with us?
Yes, my name is Yolanda Ayala.
Awesome. And how long have you been living here in Napa Valley?
I've been living here in Napa Valley since I was 7 years old. We moved here from Los Angeles. My dad came here for a visit. He went to visit an uncle in Angwin and fell in love with Napa Valley. And so he went back home and said, packed us all up, and we moved to Napa Valley.
Did he ever tell you what it was about Napa that you loved?
You know, we were living in Northridge, and Northridge was growing a lot, and he was raising 3 young children and decided that it would be a better idea to raise us in a smaller environment like Napa Valley.
And was it Napa proper that you ended up settling in, or was it farther up valley?
We lived in Angwin when we first arrived and then moved to St. Helena, so I went to St. Helena High School. And then shortly after that, we moved to Napa, and we've all been living in Napa and surrounding areas.
You mentioned that it was your dad who decided to bring the family up. Who else ended up coming with you?
So it was my dad, my mom, my older brother, my older sister, and myself. And then several years later, my younger brother was born. Okay. So it was us. Yeah.
So your grandparents were...
So my parents originated in Michoacan, Mexico, both my mom and my dad. My dad was one of the first to come to the United States. His father, my grandfather, came during the Bracero program, and he didn't like it. He didn't like the way he was being treated. Many people talk about their various and different experiences, right? For my grandfather, it wasn't positive, so he decided to go back home. My dad decided from a young age, I think he was 17 or 18 the first time he came, to work and to try to have a better life, because life in Mexico and the little ranch at the time that he was living was very poor, and there wasn't work, and it was very hard to live off working the land. And he wanted to explore and look for something different. And he said, you know, he would always hear those talks about going to el norte, going north, and how prosperous, you know, that could be. And so he's the first in his family who came. And then, you know, he married my mom, had my brother and my sister, then they all migrated, and then I was born.
Did you ever get to travel back and see your grandparents?
Yes, I did. The first time I went to Mexico to visit my the family that we had there at the time, I want to say around 3 or 4. I was little, and it was just my mom and I. And so I have some memories, but not too much. I just remember meeting my grandma for the first time. And then several years later, when I was about 12, I got to go for the second time. And I had, you know, I have more vivid memories about that, and really got to see and experience, you know, get a taste of living in Mexico in the little ranch that my parents grew up in. You know, something that I remember and I carry with me was, you know, I was only 12 years old, and it really felt like it was the first time I had been there, even though it was technically the second time. And I remember just, you know, like the smells. There's a very unique smell in Mexico when things are burning. The sky and the clouds, for whatever reason, are just more magnified and beautiful. And I remember thinking as a young 12-year-old, I'm here in this land that I've never really been in, but it feels like home. And so I think that's where my journey began, of really connecting with the motherland, right? Because it's a very different experience to be born and raised in the United States when you're of Mexican descent. So 2 very different worlds. But I am very proud of being a Mexicana, Chicana, and I'm very tied to my roots and continue learning, right? Because I was born and raised here, so there's a lot of things that I didn't get to experience. But I'm always eager to learn and ask questions. And visit Mexico any time that I'm able to do so. So I have the privilege of being able to do that.
Is there other family in Mexico still there? Or?
You know, not very many. My dad has a brother over there, and I think one of his sisters recently retired and moved back to Mexico. But other than that, everybody came here. So, like my mom's siblings lived here in Napa, Fairfield, Calistoga. My grandmother eventually moved here, and she actually lived here. Um, but she died 12 years ago. So she died here in the United States. And so it's been a while since I've been back to where my parents originated, where they grew up, where they lived, right? Where my grandma's house, still remains. Um, it's on my list of things to do. I have this desire to return to where my grandmother lived. I feel like we lost, she passed away here, but she left so much behind back home, and so. I have this desire to go back to her little house that I vaguely remember, but would like to visit for one last time, because nobody's over there. So, so we don't go there as much as I wish that we did.
Did your kids get a chance to meet your? I'm guessing they got a chance to meet your grandmother.
Yes, they did. So my dad's parents, my abuelo Rafael, my paternal grandfather, my kids got to meet him. And I got to meet him and got to know him a little bit when he would visit here and there. He also came one year and stayed here for a few months and died right away. He had a cancerous tumor that took his life. So he died here, but my dad took him back to Mexico to bury him. So we got to meet him. I did not get to meet my paternal grandmother, Maria. She passed away when my dad was a little boy. So I know very little about her, and I'm really careful to ask questions, just because I think I don't know, I do ask questions, but I tread that water very carefully because I think it was a very traumatic experience for my father and his siblings to lose their mother when they were little. They suffered a lot. They were, not very wealthy, and so losing their mother on top of all the other hardships that they carried, it was hard. So, I'll ask questions here and there. I eventually want to, formally interview my parents and get more information because it's really important to know that, right? I want to teach it to my kids. They ask questions as well. And so I didn't get to meet her. But on my mother's side, my mama Ana, which is my maternal grandmother, I developed a very close relationship with her, my kids as well. When my daughter Alyssa was little, she would spend a lot of time with my grandma because my grandma lived here with my mom, and my mom would take care of my daughter. So I feel very fortunate that they got to build a beautiful relationship. As far as my maternal grandfather, Manuel, I never met him either. He was tragically murdered when my mom was about 17 years old. So again, a lot of trauma, a lot of hardship. So it's really hard to have these conversations without bringing those very strong memories and feelings. But every once in a while, I'll ask my mom a question and she'll share how he was such an incredible leader and he was just such a noble man. And there's a lot of machismo, and the patriarchy is very real amongst our cultura. And so one of the things that my mom says is that her father wasn't so much like that, He loved his children. He was a great communicator with them. And so I unfortunately did not ever get to meet him, but I still feel connected. I still talk to him when I need to. So yeah, those are my grandparents on both sides.
Well, one of the reasons why we're gathered here together and we've been welcomed into your home is Dia de Muertos is coming up.
Yeah.
And I think within the United States, this might be one of the most iconic holidays that the country at large probably knows, aside from, Cinco de Mayo. And so definitely wanted to ask you, from what you know and what you've been told, what is the cultural significance?
Okay, so yes, that's
of an altar and
yes, the ofrenda. Yeah, great question. Dia de Muertos is a celebration of life. It's that time of the year where we honor those that have transitioned, that are no longer here on earth with us, but that remain in our hearts and minds, right? One of the things that I want to ensure is very clear is that we don't get confused with Halloween and Dia de los Muertos, because that's two very completely different things. Dia de los Muertos is celebrated in Mexico, you know, in all over the place. Like right now, everybody's probably getting everything set up for this weekend. November 1st is Dia de los Inocentes, is when the deceased children are honored. And then the following day is Dia de los Muertos, the adults that have transitioned and passed on. In Mexico, they not only set up altars, altares at home and ofrendas, but people go to cemeteries. And it's a big celebration. I have not yet experienced that in Mexico. I hope to do so one day, because I think it's beautiful. You know, I think we're so disconnected and afraid of death, and it's such a big part of our lives, right? We're all going to go there. We don't know when, we don't know how, but it's a part of life. And I think for me, really learning more about Dia de los Muertos, which is thousands of years old, right? It originated in Mexico and Central America, so it's been around forever. For me, it's really important to continue to honor this holiday, because it's honoring our ancestors. It's honoring those that we deeply loved, who, although may not be physically here, you know, we honor their spirits.
How would you go about honoring a loved one during Dia de los Muertos?
You know, I think that that's a very personal thing. I don't think there's a wrong or right way of honoring somebody that you deeply loved, that you remember, that you feel their presence, you know, whether it be in the form of a colibri, a hummingbird going by, or a beautiful flower blooming, right? There's no right or wrong way. I think that, gosh, I don't even know how to answer that question, because it's a very unique experience for each individual. For me personally, although I do set up an altar every year, I have an altar year-round in my bedroom, for example, right? I don't necessarily wait for this time of the year to have an altar. And although during this time, it's my loved ones that I honor, and friends that have transitioned that I deeply loved and miss. During this time, I set it up specifically for them. But I have an altar year-round, and I put different things on it depending on what I feel like, where I'm at in life.
That's something I appreciate, because I think for a lot of Americans who are not familiar with Mexican culture, they only see the altar during Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah.
So the altar is actually an all year thing, right?
It is. It is for a lot of families. It is for Mexican families. My mom has always had an altar. She always has her candle with La Virgen de Guadalupe, or Lady of Guadalupe. She has, a rosary. Whatever it is that you want to honor, whatever it is that sustains you, that guides you, that motivates you, can be placed on an altar. And it doesn't have to be anything huge. It could be as simple or as elaborate as you want it to be.
So all of the significance, how much of this was taught you through tradition, or how much of it did you have to learn on your own?
Well, there are some things that I did have to learn on my own. But a lot of it was passed down. The things that I had to learn on my own were the things like, well, but Mom, why do we do this? And she'd say, oh, because that's the way we do it. There was never really an explanation. Oh, that's the way we do it. That's the way we've always done it. And so I've learned a little bit about, for example, the marigold, La Flor de Cempasúchil. Like all these things have a significance, and it can vary depending on how we've been taught or what we've learned about the holiday. But this represents the element of earth. It's a very fragrant flower, and so it is said that it's fragrant because it's welcoming and guiding our ancestors for when the Dia de Muertos comes, so that they know how to ascend and arrive to our homes.
And let's see some of the elements that we have here.
Yeah.
How did you decide to compose this ofrenda?
So this is a very small ofrenda, very different from the altar that I have. And on this ofrenda, I put the traditional cempasúchil. Here's some pan de muertos, which is very traditional during this time. If you look at the pan, it is placed on altares to like to welcome our loved ones. Like, when you have people over, you offer them water or you offer them food or whatever. And so the pan de muertos is an offering to those spirits that come and visit. The way the pan is made, um, these are supposed to be bones. And in our cultura, in the Mexican culture, we have pan dulce year round. Specifically for this holiday, we have the pan de muertos. What I don't have on here is the sugar school, which is also very traditional on altares. I just didn't get around to it this time. I like flowers, and I just wanted to place different types of flowers, not just the cempasúchil, the marigold. So, and these have actually been really tough to find this year because of COVID. So any flower will do. The candles, it's the element of fire. It lights the way for when our loved ones come to visit us on this day. So that's what I have here. I have these little cacahuates, these little peanuts, and so in altares you can place food items that our loved ones, enjoyed. My abuelita used to love snacking on cacahuates, on peanuts. So I placed those on there. On the altar over there, you'll see that I have maíz, which represents the tortillas that my grandma used to make in her home. There's also a molcajete, which is what is it called in English? Is it a
mortar?
Yes, a mortar. And so she used to make the most incredible salsa, grinding the chiles. So you'll see that over there. You'll see a little bowl of frijoles, because frijoles is something that we have in our household, all the time. Altares, usually you put pictures of your loved ones, and the things that they loved, the foods. My abuelita was a devoted and believed deeply and had tremendous faith in Our Lady of Guadalupe. So this year, and every year, I always place a Virgen de Guadalupe in the altar in her honor. Flowers. I place some. A lot of people use incense. I did some sweetgrass and some sage, just because those are medicine for us on a daily basis, and I just felt like it gave it that much more importance and significance and made it even more sacred. Yeah, and there's also a nopal, which it's something that we eat also year round. My parents have them here in the yard. We grow them, and so just little things that represent our traditions and cultures and things that our loved ones like. You'll see altares with like baskets of fruits, and so it just depends on everyone. Yeah.
What's it been like getting all this stuff ready with your kids in the house? Because, they're with you all the time at this moment. So what's it been like?
They honor my space when it comes to those things that I love to do. And they're also paying attention to this, This is the first year I do an altar outside. I've always done them inside the house. And this is also probably the smallest altar that I've put together. But I've really enjoyed it even more so this time around, because I've been more about it. I'm out here in the morning in front of the altar, connecting with ancestors, with spirit, and just listening to the birds in the quiet time. I come out in the evening and I light the candles, and I spend a little time out here as well in the evening. And it's just been more connected this time around. I'm not too sure. Maybe COVID has something to do with it. But my kids have always been very good about giving me space to do the things that I love. I want them to hold on to these traditions. I want them to learn about this. And so they're paying attention. They, if you were to ask them what does it mean, I'm sure they could tell you a thing or two about the significance.
What's it been like, you know, taking on these spiritual practices in the midst of, our political environment it's been so hostile towards the Latinx community and, particularly the Chicanx community lately?
Yeah. There definitely is another element this year. There's something that feels differently. Again, I do this every year. I think this time around, given the political climate, given this world pandemic that we're in, it has allowed me to be more connected to ancestors, to ask for that guidance, because they lived through a lot more than I probably ever will. And so connecting with my ancestors for guidance, for help, for support, for medicine, for healing is very important. And it's important for my kids to see me do that as well.
Can you elaborate a little more on that idea of medicine?
I certainly don't mean Western medicine. What I mean by medicine is that ancestral knowledge that we carry and that I'm tied to because of my indigenous lineage, right? And so we've been taught to look to our ancestors for guidance and help, and all that is medicinal. All of that is healing when we're able to connect, and so that's what I mean by that.
So, do you believe that in your heart, do you feel and believe that there are universal values within Dia de Muertos and the altar? Do you feel that other cultures have something to benefit?
I think so. Again, death is a part of every human's being. Every human being's. It's a part of their lives, right? It's everybody on Earth, no matter what race, color, ethnicity we are. We're all going to get there, and so I think that that it's important to not be so afraid of it. Of course, it is scary, right? We don't want to die. Like when I think of that, I think I still have my children to raise, and they still need me, and so, I still need time here on Earth. But it is a part of life, and so how we accept it and honor it can help us get through those difficult times that losing a loved one can feel like. So yeah, I think anybody can benefit from it. Anybody can honor somebody that they've loved, right? You don't have to be, of a certain culture to honor somebody that you loved here on Earth, right? It's important to keep their memories alive, their legacies. Yeah, so I think it's a benefit for it could be beneficial for everyone.
In the realm of education, where you've spent a lot of your career in, I remember within the Legacy Youth Project, there was an altar in every classroom.
Yes.
Could you speak on why the program decided to incorporate the concept of the altar into a classroom?
Sure, yeah, all of our classrooms had an altar. And just for a lot of the same reasons that I've expressed here, was to have someone or something to connect to remember what it is that we're trying to accomplish, to go to a place to have guidance, to feel hope, esperanza. Our youth would bring pictures or like items such as rosaries or shirts and books or whatever, and to each of them, those items stood for something really important, and it grounded them. And in those moments of hardship, they were able to go to the altar and look at their beautiful sacred artifact, as we called it, and remember, their values and their goals and what it is that they're trying to do in the most healthy, positive way.
Well, Yoli,
Yes.
you've answered, shared so much wisdom with us. Are there any
Thank you.
parting thoughts that you'd you'd like to give us, or?
No, I thank you for your time, for asking me to have this conversation. It's obviously a conversation that I am excited to have and proud to talk about my abuelitas and my abuelitos, and yeah, just to share out a little bit of what's sustaining a lot of people right now, that connection to ancestors, that connection to ancestral medicine and knowledge. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.